Yeah, bad back. I said, yeah, everybody written no. I thought I kind of put bad back there. She said, no, it's COVID. It's COVID, it's bad back. So, I've bent up a bit. But I'm doing walking for my breathing, Colin, and that sorted me because of this long COVID carry on, you know.
Yeah.
So I walked Happy Bridge and up the canal and down the river yesterday and round there, you know.
Yeah.
So I've got a bit
that'd be a lovely walk.
It was gorgeous and it was so green, you know.
Yeah.
How are you doing though? Are you
Yeah, I've had COVID
Have you?
about 5 weeks
and
ago.
what happened with it? Did you have a bad do?
All I did, I'd done some gardening for Bramley Care Bears on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I walked from, let's say I were at Tesco at Bramley.
Yeah.
I went to the library at Bramley.
Yeah.
Then I walked down to Morrison's at Bramley.
Yeah, the station.
And then I went for a bus to go up to Pudsey and I could hardly walk.
Yeah.
It just came on like that.
Just knocks you out, doesn't it?
And then I got really cold.
Yeah.
So I got home at 2:15, went straight to bed.
Then you
took my shoes off, fully clothed.
Sweating cobs in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I went to sleep. And, apart from getting up to go to the toilet, and I got up to get something to eat.
You just slept it off.
Slept it off
till
good. Got up at 8 o'clock following morning, and I thought, I'm all right now.
Yeah.
But my legs were still weak.
Don't be surprised though. Some days it'll come back and you'll feel like you did on that coming out the library when you can't walk in. It's wavy, very wavy. This immediate area, a lot of the houses were prison houses for people that worked in the prison. But they don't employ as many, and they use contractors that come in from outside. So it was known as a local prison. So all those houses over there were, you paid your rent through the prison. You got a house as well as was a prison warder. So all the prison warders, men and women, work locally, and they're about 600. Now it's a company does it, and they bring them in a van. Do you know what I mean? So the local employment went there. This area also, a bit that way, was light engineering. You'll still see some car repair workshops. And then there was the gas company, and they provided most of the jobs. The gas company was qualified jobs. You had to have some skills and training, but the others, little bits of engineering shops, you could get jobs there, you know. Car repairing was quite big round here, down the streets over there. But those jobs have dried up. There's not as many garages to work in. And also it's skills and training. This area has a low number of people that go through school and go to, well, I don't know, the leaving age is 18 now, and it was 16. They didn't go on from 16 to anywhere else, neither to a college nor to a university or a higher or further education. It was low in expectations and really ambition really for education. So there was a skills gap here. And that meant people were staying home and signing on. The other thing is the tower blocks here have been, I wouldn't use it as a phrase in a report, but a dumping ground by the council. In other words, if you come out of prison and you're single and there's an empty flat on the 13th floor, they'll give it you. The police still think this is one of the worst crime pockets. This the immediate neighbourhood in West Yorkshire, and I've had a right row saying it's out of date, your figures are out of date, but don't keep saying that or you make them worse, you know. But it had that reputation that it had no job opportunities, no skills training and backup, so kind of abandoned at 16 really, you know, and then had to survive. Formed relationships, not surprisingly relationships fell apart. Then you're stuffed in the tower blocks, you know, and that's the end of the story. You jump off the top, and so it was a sad chain of events. When I was a kid in school, I grew up in a place called Batley Car in Dewsbury, where it was all the old mills shutting down at the time in the 50s. And the teacher said, what do you want to grow up when? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, a farmer. And she just laughed and said, this kid's mad. He hasn't seen a cow or a pig. He lives in the city, you know. He doesn't even know what chicken is, except, you know, what is going on? Why does he want to be a farmer? And then she said, oh, it's your granddad, innit? Because he came from County Mayo. You're a throwback from the peasants of Ireland, she said, which was true. And it's like there's a road gene in your head. Never underestimate who is in the neighbourhood, that you will find occasionally there are brilliant people with real talents there as well that are not noticed or appreciated. It's not that, I don't want to give everybody's totally homogeneously suppressed and there's not a chance. I'll give you an example. Ria, do you know Ria who's here? No, you may not have come across Ria. Ria came in, I've got a music group going, I play a bit of a guitar as well, and I got someone to bring in a keyboard to help make a band up, and I'd gone to get a cup of tea, and I came back and I could hear I'm not a classical musician at all, but it was definitely Bach, and I thought, I must put a radio, and I went in, and he was just playing Bach. So I said to her, hey, you can really play. No, I can't, it's my mum. And I said, what's about your mum? She says, oh, she played for the Halley Orchestra in Manchester for 30 years as the top pianist, the concert pianist. So I said, and where does she live? Over there. So I said, and what, she just sits at home watching telly now. The people that I represented in West Leeds became the cleaners of the shops and the offices because they hadn't got the education to do the jobs at the higher level. Do you see what I mean? So West Leeds became known in the Sun newspaper. My area here and Bramley and Wortley became known as white van man land. So backing up the service sector with individual people getting a white van and delivering stuff, and that's how we still are, except it's gone to Uber, it's gone to what do we call it, the Deliveroo and all those with youngsters on bikes, but it used to be white van. And white van man could also include people who trained to be electricians or plumbers or selling bits of stuff, and they used to say on a Friday night you could get anything from a leg of lamb to a Rolls Royce out the back of a white van outside the pub. But it was, and so the Sun newspaper described West Leeds as white van man land, light industry, but service sector backing up the big service sectors, plus the Asians is what they described it as, plus a few Asians, they said. And that caricature was quite right, really. Yes, there were Asians, taxi driving, shops, but the backup was for the office sector that had developed in these. All those offices needed cleaners, so people here worked as cleaners that went and cleaned day and night or cleaned in the hospitals. So we became the sub-service sector economy, and that is true of the neighbourhood here. At one point I said what I would do is I'd knock the wall down and put it brick, or I'd face it with something different so it didn't look like an old medieval prison. And it's the look of it from the hill from Cardigan Road that's the worst bit about the prison. But at the same time, they've been under strain in recent years because of overcrowding in the prison and suicides in the prison. And now people know people. It's a local prison, so quite a lot of the people here would know people who've gone in, or would know some who've gone in, don't we all then? And so there's some empathy with people who come in, and that we shouldn't write them off. And that's really encouraging. So I've actually found that there's more empathy for offenders than there is for asylum seekers, actually. The history of back-to-back houses, were built around to supply housing for people that worked in the mills, really, and in factories. So those big factories, it was the streets of housing, wasn't it? They didn't have inside bathrooms and toilets. They had what we call middens. So you had a block of 8, and then you'll see gaps. If you went to the pages, you'll see a block where there's a space. Have you ever seen them in between? That was the toilet yard. That's what that was, to share by everybody. And it was tin bath jobs and all the works, And that kept going till well into the 50s. But in the 1930s, a vicar became the leader of the council, who was called Reverend Charlie Jenkinson. He came from the East End of London, and he decided, he was in Holbeck and Hunslet, and he decided the people needed space and light because they were all getting TB. That was, it's a bit like the plague that we just had, and so he's, and also sanitation, he said you need houses with space and light and inside bathrooms. So he built and designed the first council houses in the country. It was actually built in Belle Island, Middleton, and he went to say we're going to give people space and light. That was his dream. And so he built the big estates. So the big estates of Bramley, the estates of Wortley, the Wincover estate I'm thinking of, Kirkstall, the Horsworth estate, Seacroft estate, all the big estates in these were all built as part of his plan. And his plan was flatten the back-to-backs and give people houses, semis with gardens for families. There was a row in a church in Hunslet between him and a Catholic priest. And Charlie Jenkinson had built Belle Isle up the road and up the hill, and he'd put the designs up, and he said we're knocking down the back-to-backs, we're going to move people up the hill. And the Catholic priest said to him, well, be careful that when you do it, that you don't just move out young families and leave behind the old people, or you'll tear up the roots of basic community between the generations. And that's exactly what happened. So mums and prams went up the hill, and the old folks were left behind until the generation got through. And so then what happened was the tensions built in, and they became like crime-ridden estates, do you know what I mean? And the estates became the problem. So that's when there was a tension then between, and the back-to-backs, there were loads of them. Leeds was one of the highest numbers. So then, should we carry on knocking them down? And then some, and I was one of them saying at the time, no, don't knock them down, change them into decent housing, just knock some through, put bathrooms in them, And so there was tension about what to do with the back-to-backs. But by which time round here, most had gone, all that estate was put up instead, you know. And some of the estates were temporary. There was an estate I was in the other day, up Butts Lane, and it's called the Baum Estate. It was built temporarily for 15 years in 1954. Where are we now? And the people are still living there, and the roofs are flat, and they still leak, you know, and they're like prefabs. And so it was always never solved, wasn't the problem of doing up the Edinburghs and the Paisleys, you know where they are, just down the road in Armley. They're still back-to-backs with those mid-ins, but some have been done up well, and they should continue that process of doing them up properly, you know, and renewing them and making them energy efficient and stuff, which you can do.